assume I did not take him off work because I didn't note it anywhere in the chart.
And did you at some point have a discussion with Mr. Crawford about going to see Dr. Howell for a second opinion?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, had you offered Mr. Crawford all of the medical care that was reasonably indicated in your professional opinion?
Yeah, I think at that time a second opinion would be a good idea.
And again, was Mr. Crawford ever a surgical candidate?
No.
That's all I have.
Doctor, my name is Mark Freeman. I briefly spoke to you before the deposition started. Let me ask you a few questions, please. You are a orthopedic surgeon, is that correct?
Yes.
So would you say that 90% of your practice involves operations?
No. It's I see 60 people a day in an average clinic day, and out of that probably schedule 2 for operation.
Okay, so those others that you see, what services are you providing them?
Care of injuries to the musculoskeletal system non-operatively.
Right. So in this particular case, as it relates to Mr. Crawford, you indicated that you knew you'd been in a car accident, but you, as you sit here today, cannot testify whether or not his complaints after the accident were caused by the wreck.
That's correct.
All right. Have you seen patients in the past, doctor, who have been in a car wreck, similar to Mr. Crawford, who've had degenerative changes in their spine that were asymptomatic prior to the wreck, and then start having painful symptoms in their back after a car wreck?
Yes.
All right. Now, you saw Mr. Crawford before this accident for other issues, did you not?
Dr. Bratton, my partner, did in 2000.
All right. You have that note there in front of you?
Yes.
You mind if I see that? Thank you. What I'd ask you to do, if you don't mind, is can you identify anywhere in that note where he's complained of similar symptoms as he complained to you after the accident?
No, he was seeing Dr. Bratton at that point for a chief complaint of anterior knee pain and pain in his right little toe.
Okay. So based on that record, we can establish that Mr. Crawford had pain in 2000 regarding another part of his body, and he did come here for treatment. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is there any evidence that you know of that Mr. Crawford was symptomatic prior to the automobile accident as it relates to the condition of the spine that you saw through x-rays and MRIs?
No.
Okay. So is it hard for you to believe then that a car accident, as described by Mr. Crawford, would result in the development of symptoms after the accident that he would not have had prior to the accident?
No, it's not hard to believe at all, and I never stated that. Okay. That's the issue here is I have no way to prove it one way or the other.
All right. Well, granted, you were not at the accident scene, and you have clearly told us about that. But in your experience, you have seen patients who become symptomatic after a car wreck.
Sure.
And do you currently treat patients like that?
Yes.
And are those patients similar to Mr. Crawford in that they have degenerative problems that prior to their accident were not symptomatic?
Well, again, that's all by history, but yes.
Okay. And history is critical in your evaluation of the patient and how to treat it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you, I guess, you said a second opinion was warranted under the circumstances after you had done what you could for Mr. Crawford. And granted, you'd said earlier that he was not a surgical candidate as far as you were concerned, but that he had what you would consider to be a painful and prolonged road ahead with regard to therapy. Is that what you said?
Objective characterization.
Did I say painful and prolonged road?
I wrote it here, painful and prolonged cause or course of therapy.
I don't know if I'm that good at predicting how long things are going to take or how painful they're going to be. But he does have a chronic condition in his back that would predictably take some care every now and then throughout his life, probably.
All right. Now, there was Mr. Gilmore made a point to describe Mr. Crawford when you came into the room on I believe it was November 19th, and Mr. Crawford was sitting in a chair reading a paper. Now, that statement, if interpreted a certain way, might give the impression that Mr. Crawford was not in pain throughout this period of time. Do you know whether or not Mr. Crawford had been taking pain medication that was prescribed by you on that particular day?
No, I don't.
Okay. So it may very well be that he was on pain medication on that day and was not in pain. Could that
Possible.
be possible? All right. You're not in any way trying to portray to the jury that you don't believe that Mr. Crawford was suffering any pain because of what he was experiencing during this period of time, are you?
No, what I do with my notes is there's a difference 2 years later when you're looking back at your notes and you can't remember the exam exactly. If someone is lying on the exam table sweating bullets with one leg pulled up into their chest and crying versus sitting in a chair comfortably reading a paper. And I try to dictate those things into my notes so that I have a feel 2 years later what level of pain we're dealing with.
All right. But you didn't tell Mr. Crawford, hey, on November 19th, make sure you don't take any pain medication when you come in so that we know exactly how much pain you're having.
No, of course not.
All right. And if you had someone that you thought might come in pain, would you recommend that they be on some kind of pain medication?
I believe, I don't think I prescribed any pain medication here, did I? I think I prescribed some ibuprofen and some steroidal treatment. I'm sorry, one of our nurses called in some pain medication.
It looks like it was Darvocet. How would you describe that on the range of ibuprofen and then up maybe to some higher narcotic medication?
Well, it is a narcotic. It's one of the milder ones. It has a less addictive potential, but it is a pain medication.
All right. Now, are you aware at all of what Dr. Howell has been doing for Mr. Crawford?
No.
All right. Do you know who Everett Howell is?
Yes.
Okay. How would you characterize him, his reputation in the Middle Tennessee community?
He's a well-known good neurosurgeon in Middle Tennessee.
Would you consider him to be one of the top leading neurosurgeons in Middle Tennessee?
I don't know how you rate that, but he has a good reputation in Middle Tennessee.
Okay. Have you ever found him to be anything other than conservative in his treatment of patients?
I'm not that familiar with his practice style, but I believe through his reputation that he is not known for rushing right into things, let me put it that way.
So is it fair to say that you would trust his opinion as a neurosurgeon in the community?
I would assume he would have an opinion about whatever case he does, and he's welcome to it. I may not agree with it, but I'd respect it.
All right. And so, having said, if Dr. Howell believed that the symptoms that Mr. Crawford was suffering were directly related to the car accident, you have any issue with that?
No, I don't know one way or the other.
Okay.
I haven't said they were or weren't.
All right.
I'm telling you, I don't know.
All right. And if Dr. Howell has stated under oath that he believes that Mr. Crawford's symptoms developed after the accident and were essentially he was essentially asymptomatic prior to the wreck, would your response be the same?
I'd have no reason to dispute his opinion. It doesn't change my opinion.
And as far as just so that I understand what you prescribed and so forth and what was done, all the MRIs and X-rays and office visits that you had, all those, of course, were reasonable and necessary charges.
Yes.
And you did prescribe physical therapy for Mr. Crawford, did you not?
Yes.
Now, one last question. Do you ever prescribe drugs such as Celebrex or those types of COX inhibitors?
Yes.
And do you recommend any type of testing for those patients who are under those types of prescription?
What I usually tell them is that we'll go ahead and start them on those medications, but if they're going to take them for any length of time, they'll need to follow up with their medical doctor and have their liver and kidneys checked for reactions to the medication at least once a year. But we turn that responsibility over to the medical doctors if they're going to be on it chronically.
Okay, so I want you to assume for a moment, since you haven't followed Mr. Crawford's care, that he is in fact on Celebrex chronic.